saturating the decision maker with facts is not a promising strategy. The reason it's not is because our brains are programmed to keep us safe.
Yes.
And the way that is communicated to us is through a feeling. So if we're going to take a risk, the brain is going to deliver us some level of fear. Maybe you would just call it concern.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you would call it panic, and there's a bunch of levels in between, right?
Yeah.
But the brain is going to do that. That's your brain's job.
What I love about this interview and what I find so compelling about it, even though I did it almost a couple of years ago now, I still think about it because my guest, Denise Shull, is a coach for hedge fund managers, traders, like finance people who have a reputation of being really, shall we say, anti-emotion, cold, calculated decision-making type people. And I know most of you listening to this are not that way. And I really didn't realize how much the thinking had changed on that to embrace the emotional part of decision making. And so many of us, I think, have maybe been made to feel a bit bad about including our emotions when we make decisions. And it's like, oh, no, take the emotion out of it and do this. And Denise is like, no. Do not take the emotion out of it. And in fact, she makes the point that inundating a person with facts and information freezes them from their ability to make their decision because they're too overwhelmed and they go into a state of fear. So my beautiful health coaches and myself as a coach or a parent or a caregiver to somebody we're trying to support through behavior change, this is really, really an important episode to listen to or re-listen to because there are so many gold nuggets in here about how to support ourselves and other people through making decisions by understanding how the decision making actually works. And it's not by reading a list of facts and a list of potential dangers, right? Or giving someone a protocol. That is not it. So enjoy my chat with Denise. I know you will. This is really worth listening to again. I learned, even though I did the interview myself, I learned so much more going over it all. And come join us on Thursdays at the Reverse Agent Club to chat live. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on how you make decisions and how to support yourself to do so safely and to take risks and do all kinds of fun stuff that we are so capable of that we sometimes talk ourselves out of. So Reverse Agent Club, Thursday at noon, go to our Substack to sign up. And again, if you're looking for the Quantum Biology Collective, go to Substack. We've got lots of live speakers coming up on there. It's going to be a really good time. The QBC podcast is now over there on Substack. All right, have fun. Hello, Denise Shull. Welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today. I love your work. I love it.
Thank you. That's always nice to hear.
Yes. Well, I think, so often, like we live in this world where everything is separated, right? And even the idea of quantum biology, it was like you had to take quantum physics and incorporate it with biology, and the scientists who did that were taking a huge risk by crossing that silo. And we have this idea of economics and finance as totally separate from emotions. And, like that's all in the woo. There's the woo-woo world and the real world. And I think your work combines everything so beautifully, which is what life really is. And so I just love that how you've been able to do that. And I'm really excited to talk about it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. It's a little different than someone asking me about market decisions. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing research for this. I was like listening to a lot of trader podcasts, which was new. That was new for my feed. So let's start with a little background about what you do. And as with most of the guests on this podcast, you're in a completely different place from where you started out by following life's opportunities and your own intuition. So just give us a bit of a background, what it is that you do now and how you got there.
Yeah, basically what I spend most of my time doing now is talking to portfolio managers most of whom work at hedge funds. And what that really means, people don't really know this, is most of the money that hedge funds trade and invest come from pension funds. So like teachers, firefighters, people don't realize that that's who invests in hedge funds. And then any given hedge fund splits that money up against through however many people they have working for them. So then those people are making market decisions in different markets, stocks that everyone knows, but maybe bonds, maybe currencies, maybe energy. So I work with our portfolio managers to help them make better market decisions, like using everything that neuroscience now says about human perception and judgment. That's what I spend most of my days on the phone talking to guys, some women from all over the world who are managing money. How I got there, the first answer is I'm not quite sure. But the second answer is when I was young, I wanted to work for IBM and like have an American Express card to be able to travel like so badly. So I managed to get that job. And then I was actually supposed to go on a leave of absence to go to Stanford Business School. And I was like, if I have to come back and like sell computers to Progressive Insurance, which was my big client outside of Cleveland, Ohio, I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that for the rest of my life because it didn't really mean that much. I was like, what does this do for the world? So I finagled to get my way into a graduate program, which ended up being the University of Chicago has this really cool graduate program that you can really design your own master's degree. So I did that. It is technically in neuropsychoanalysis, which basically just means, we have an unconscious, right? Like not everything we do is completely in our consciousness. So I wanted to know like how we could have an unconscious from a biological point of view. So that's what my paper was about. And then literally,
what did you find out?
The most important thing is there's something in biology called critical period. So like if a bird doesn't hear its species song within its critical period, whatever that is, it can never sing it. So I end up, there's people have probably heard of attachment theory and these different forms of attachment. So I surmised or hypothesized that there's really a critical period for self-image that you learn very young, and then that teaches you. It's often incorrect, right? But like as a child, you get these viewpoints on like how important you are, how authority will react to you, what you have to do to get what you want, what you have to do to get love. And at the time, we didn't know what the neuroscience knows now, which is we're always predicting based on past experience. But I sort of surmised that. But then I took this I was like Miss Organization, planned my career, planned my leave from IBM, like always had these goals and these strategies. And then I was in Chicago, turning left on Jackson Avenue from LaSalle with a guy that I dated, admittedly, but he was a floor trader. And these guys ran up to him and said, Don, why don't you go upstairs with us and trade with us upstairs? Which meant instead of like on the floor in movies like you've seen with those guys with the crazy jackets, they were trading upstairs on a computer network. This is actually 30 years ago. It was the summer of 94. And he said to me, well, instead of just sitting at home writing that master's paper, why don't you come hang out in our trading office? He had thought I would be a good trader and had wanted me to come on the floor. And I'd be like, you're not doing that thing.
No, thanks.
I mean, I'm tall, but I'm not that tall. And you guys are all like, I'm not doing no, out of the question. And so like, I literally say my life changed by turning left onto Jackson because I did do that. And I did start trading my own account. And I did like, I think I had sent in one PhD application that I like forgot completely about it. So then I was like, okay, I had this really interesting, expensive master's thesis, but I was like trading and I didn't think they had anything to do with each other, really. I mean, people would sort of say, but I'd be like, not really. It was neuroscience and it was like brain development. And then, I don't know, 8-9 years into my trading career, which by that time I'd moved to New York to run a trading desk, and I was dabbling in some classes in psychoanalysis, like at a little tiny institute. They asked to publish my master's thesis. And I was like, you guys don't realize it, but like it's a decade old. and it will sound sort of stupid, or at least that's what I perceived. That may not have actually even been the case, but in any event, that's how I perceived it. And I grappled with it, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to update it just so that I can say I was like published in the journal. There was a point earlier in my life where I wanted to be a writer. So I was like, well, that'd be fun. I could say I was published in a journal. So when I went to do the research to update it, a scientist named Antonio Damasio, who's now at University of Southern California, I believe, unless he's retired, but he had been at Iowa, and they had done all these experiments on people who were brain damaged in such a way that they didn't have feeling and emotion. So they lived in an institutional setting because they couldn't actually navigate the world. But they did very specific experiments with how they perceived, judged, made a decision, and found they really couldn't. Like the simple thing to which candy bar to buy out of a vending machine, what shirt to wear, what day to go to the doctor, they couldn't decide. They would do this. Well, I should go on Tuesday for these reasons. I should go on Wednesday for these reasons. I should go on Tuesday for these reasons. Because they had no sense of what was like better for them, or, fit their desires or their needs, a chocolate candy bar versus peanut butter candy bar, whatever. They couldn't decide. So he ended up saying, if you don't have emotion, you don't have some feeling of what's correct, you can't decide. And I mean, I've been on Wall Street for almost a decade at that point, and I had heard, take the emotion out of it, emotion gets in your way. I was like, whoa.
Whoa. Yeah, because
like,
that is the go-to advice when you're making a logical decision. Maybe not, whether to get married or something, but like when it comes to money and practical things, take the emotion out of it. Don't make emotional decisions. And now you did the research to find out that, in fact, it is impossible to make any kind of decision, no matter how simple, without an emotional drive.
Yeah.
Huh.
In fact, just this week, I did a podcast earlier this week for a big financial, it's like an internet television called Real Vision. And they had this 2-week series and interviewing all these experts, and I'm somewhere in the middle. And they said, everybody last week said, take the emotion out of it. I mean, it's still but basically I just started talking about, I literally started talking about it. I talked about it to this guy in my trading office. It's this long, crazy story. He was trading under a false identity because he was trading for this famous trader, but he didn't want anybody to know. And he's like, you need to write an article. And I'm like, yeah, right. Like, who's going to publish an article by me? Well, that's when he revealed, well, really, I'm this other person. And because I work for this famous person, I know all these editors, and I can get you an article. So I wrote this article that did come out, I think, in December of '94, called Freud's Path to Profits. And it was literally just both you have emotion and you have conscious and unconscious emotion, and it's influencing your trading decisions. And it took on a life of its own. And I always say, it's not because I'm so smart. It's because I was interested, I was open-minded, and it was the truth. So I was stupid or gutsy enough to speak the truth. And then because it was the truth, plenty of people recognized it as interesting. There are still people who think I'm that crazy woman who says, use your emotions. I mean, still, I'm sure they don't actually call me very often, but there were enough people. And I always said, if I'm going to do some consulting in this, I only have a small amount of time anyway. So I don't care if half the world thinks I'm crazy. I feel like this is valuable information, so I need to put it forward. And 20 years later, I have a consulting company that we have clients all over the world. And it's still the same, teaching people to know, what are they feeling? Why are they feeling it? And which category does it fall in? Does it fall in information about the problem you're trying to solve, whatever it is, where to go to dinner or what career to have, or some problem in your job? Or is it irrelevant to the problem, but maybe about you and your future safety? And how to know and separate them and use the feelings that include intuition, right? Because intuition is a physical sense. How to sort that out as a data set. So I'm glad I didn't stay at IBM, because I was kind of I was meant to do this.
I think so. And have you noticed that people, I would imagine, are motivated to work with you to be better at their jobs? But I can only imagine that learning these skills would have second order effects in their lives, in their relationships. And could you speak to that a little? Have you noticed that?
I have clients tell me that their relationships with their spouse and their relationships with their children get better as they're willing to think about what they're feeling and why. I've had a few clients over the years who like worked with me for a period of time and then, took a break, and year 2, 3 years later, I get a call from them saying, my wife said, can you go back to working with Denise because you were easier to get along with when you were? I haven't had that happen lately, but I have had that happen quite a few times. Or
I bet.
a lot of like people think these hedge fund managers are like, selfish, greedy. They're generally not. I mean, they're generally 30, 40, a few 50-year-old, mostly men, happily married, a couple, 2, 3 kids, trying to find enough time to work out and spend time with their kids. And they do end up being able to articulate better what they're feeling, which makes them more effective, in their relationships, as opposed to acting it out, suppressing it, all of the other taking it out on someone. So definitely.
Okay. All right. So I want to get into that process, but first I just want to talk about the research behind it, because I heard you sharing with someone on a podcast how part of the reason that nobody knows that emotions and decisions are so intrinsically linked, even if it's a quote unquote unemotional decision, something that you think you're making purely based on facts and numbers and spreadsheets, there's always that emotional component. And people don't know that because the research is quite new, but it's all there. And I was thinking that's kind of the same thing as the research on, say, circadian biology, right? Like it's all there. We know that dysregulating your circadian rhythm is going to make it impossible to be healthy, but the evidence is all there, but it hasn't been integrated into the common consciousness yet. And I think it's the same with this research. So there's a parallel there. Could you share where this came from in terms of the academic setting and how it's slowly being integrated into the world?
So there was Damasio and his group of colleagues. Some of the rest of them I should be able to name because they should get credit. He wrote a book. It's called Descartes. Descartes, the philosopher, said, I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
He wrote this book that's no, it's I feel, therefore I am. And he wrote it in like 98.
Right. I
So,
remember that book. Yeah.
That's a long time ago. I mean, this going on, it's 25 years ago. Well, I don't know if directly, but alongside of that, a field in academia arose. They call it neuroeconomics. It means how does the brain make an economic decision, which is how does the brain make a risk decision?
Okay.
So here's the amazing thing. 3 highly esteemed neuroeconomists, one of them from Caltech, which is known to be a very like techie, kind of graduate program. They wrote this summary paper, this meta-analysis, which means they took all the papers on neuroeconomics and they summarized them. It's 65 pages. It's still sitting there on my floor. Like they say, number 1, entirely new set of constructs to understand human decision-making in 2005. They also say it's not enough to know what should be done. One must also feel it. So by the way, I mean, that right there is like the sentence. Because every human being alive has said, I know I should do X, but I keep doing Y. Why?
Why?
Because it's not enough to know. You have to have the attendant feelings. Well, I mean, I have hundreds of references. 2007, a woman named Lisa Feldman Barrett and I think it was Martin CO. They did research on like making stock market decisions, and they showed that the people who were the most emotional made the most money. Now, like exactly the opposite. So number 1, there's a misunderstanding. Like you don't have to control your emotions. You can be as emotional as you want, jump up and down, scream and yell. All that matters is what you actually do. Which, by the way, I saw in my trading office. I was always reading all these books, take all the emotion out of it. And there was this one trader in our office, the one who made the most money, who had made the most money. His name was Steve. I had to say, Steve, shut up, because he's always jumping up and down, screaming. He was super emotional. And I was like, take the emotion out of it, Steve. Take the emotion out of it, Steve. But in any event, I think it's a bit like whenever the world changed from thinking the world was flat to round. There is this global misunderstanding that the intense emotion causes the action. Now, that can be true. I'm not denying that that doesn't happen. But so people just can't believe that it's not the emotion, where it's that person's action that causes the problem. If they were like Steve, jumping up and down and screaming, but then choosing what to do, like they might actually make a better choice if they could analyze that part of the data. But anyway, because it looks like the earth is flat, right? If you stand on the beach and you look at it, it looks like it's flat. So you think you're going to sail off. Well, it looks like the emotion is the problem, but it's actually not. It's the action that acts out the emotion that actually causes the problem. And I think because it's so foreign to what people have been taught and what they can see, that they just can't hear it. Because I mean, when I first started talking about this, it was 2004. So it was new research, but it is 2024. And I have to stop myself when I give workshops from not including yet another quote from yet another study. And even in 2007, 8, 9, I started going to that Neuroeconomics, like their annual academic meeting. 2007, 8, 9, none of the neuroeconomists even bothered to debate whether you needed emotion to make a decision. They'd already accepted that as like a fact. So I just think it's so unexpected and so counter to the visual evidence of like the ocean being flat or someone acting out an emotion.
Right.
That people can't, like I will have clients tell, they completely get it. They completely understand that their emotions give them information. And then the next words out of their mouth is, how do I get over that feeling? I'm like, can we just stop worrying about getting over it and just learn to feel what we feel and analyze it? But everybody still thinks, even when they work with me, that they need to somehow take it out of the equation.
Right. You're the feelings expert, so you're going to help them dissect or surgically remove the feelings.
Surgically remove. Yeah.
So the feeling itself is never the problem. It's the action we take because of that feeling. So how do you coach people to get into that space in between those two and not negate the feeling entirely, but also not necessarily take an action that might cause harm if, say, the feeling is anger or frustration? What does that look like?
So I have to interject in here what I perceive to be the very latest and the most accurate science.
Okay.
Which is something called anticipatory affect, meaning we anticipate an affect being sort of a state of feeling, the psychological word for a state of feeling, really. And Brian Knudsen of Stanford has shown how anticipating a future feeling or a future affect, he can show the operation of that in every level of the brain, from the brainstem all the way to the prefrontal cortex. And once people understand that they are predicting some future emotional state, which in broad terms is safe, not safe.
Yeah.
Good, bad. And then there's other neuroscientists who have shown, like neuroscience also understands now we're predicting everything. You're predicting the next words out of my mouth right now. You don't know it, but based on, your level. Now, so once people start to understand that they are predicting their future state, and when we dive into it, because I'll say, well, what happens then? And what happens then? Well, I get fired. Okay. And then what? Well, actually, I have, $2 million saved and I will be okay, like for 3 years, and I'll probably get another job. But they never do that for themselves. They never go into the prediction. Most of the time, when people go into the prediction, which usually has some, I'm not going to be safe, because the brain's trying to keep you,
right.
The brain's trying to stop you from doing things that harm you.
Okay. So I'm at work or I'm thinking about making a change. I just worked with a bunch of people who are about to become health coaches, and they were like, but what if this happens? And what if that happens? So it's like we perceive some level of risk we think it's going to have a bad or dangerous outcome, and then our thinking stops.
Well, what we
Like,
usually
or
try
what
to
do we-
do, what we usually try to do is talk ourselves out of that.
Okay.
We try to use facts to talk ourselves out of it. And to quote Jennifer Lerner of Harvard, who's done an enormous amount of research on emotion decision making, saturating the decision maker with facts is not a promising strategy. The reason it's not is because our brains are programmed to keep us safe.
Yes.
And the way that is communicated to us is through a feeling. So if we're going to take a risk, the brain is going to deliver us some level of fear. Maybe you would just call it concern.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you would call it panic, and there's a bunch of levels in between, right?
Yeah.
But the brain is going to do that. Like, Meredith, make sure you've thought this through so that as it plays out, like, you do the things that keep you safe. That's your brain's job. So you can't stop that from happening. And other researchers have found, like Jennifer, when you try to just use facts to talk yourself out of it, usually the emotional signal gets bigger, gets louder, because your brain wants, your unconscious wants your conscious mind to know that you've worked out like how you're going to handle the risks, the unknown.
Okay.
So there's this.
So, like, if I'm about to get on an airplane and I'm feeling really scared, and someone starts telling me all the statistics about how safe airplanes are, that's probably not going to help my fear. It's because I'm not connecting to the core driver of that emotion.
Yeah.
Okay.
The irony is when you can say, I'm panicked because I'm afraid that, this plane is going to crash and I'm going to die and my family is going to be left without me or whatever. Like, then actually it's like what you actually know kicks in. There's this articulating the feeling and being able to have the feeling that if it doesn't completely erase it, and it doesn't always completely erase it, it neutralizes it or dissipates it to some degree, that then you're able to bring into the equation like the more reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe you're still nervous about being on a plane, but then a strategy like distracting yourself with a book is sufficient.
Right.
Where it's not. So you can't see this, but that's an article about me working with an Olympic snowboarder.
Mm-hmm.
And she does snowboard cross racing. It's when the 6 of them go down that course and all of that,
Oh, wow.
On top of each other. It's crazy dangerous, right?
Okay.
She won 2 gold medals in 22, by the way.
Yay.
She had always been the most technically competent, meaning she could read the course and plan in advance, like when she was, she could start out in the back when she was going to pass who, or when she was going to go around this way. She wasn't necessarily good at this. They pull themselves out of the gate at the top. Mm-hmm. She'd never been that particularly fast out of the gate. Now, what she'd always been doing is telling herself, don't be afraid. And I'm like, Lindsay, first of all, it doesn't matter that you're most technically competent. You're going to be like, what you guys are about to do, 6 of you down that course on top of each other, is scary. And I don't care how good you are at it. Said, how about you just admit to how you really feel in the gate? So she started doing that. And she, for the first time in her very long career, started getting out of the gate faster. Because her brain was using the worry, like, make sure you're prepared, mm-hmm. Make sure you've thought about this. She's trying to suppress it. It's getting louder, like the fear's getting more intense. And if the fear's more intense, your muscles are going to like move slower. So once she just acknowledged it, the literal like biochemical volume of that decreased, and she was able to do the thing more quickly because her muscles, it was less disrupted by this other energy. Yeah. What am I feeling and why? The accurate answer. It has to be accurate, which is hard to do. That's the skill. But like, there's all sorts of research that shows emotion. It's called emotion differentiation and granularity. The more you can differentiate, like between fear, frustration, disappointment, let's say, mm-hmm. and the more you can be granular, like, am I just concerned, or am I panicked, or am I worried, or am I scared, or whatever, or am I in the context of frustration, anger, am I slightly annoyed, or am I like, enraged? the better decisions you make. The better you can differentiate and be granular, the better decisions you make. The literal exact opposite of what the world tells you.
Yeah. The world tells you, hey, put that decision away or put that emotion away. But really, it's like the more intimate we are with the emotion, the more
That's a good word.
information it gives us.
Exactly. Now that then becomes the skill, like which of these feelings is about whatever I'm trying to resolve,
Right.
and which is me just projecting my self-image
Right.
that I'm going to do because the brain is using its past experience and it's trying to keep you safe. So you is like your self-image. It's going to do, but you can put them in buckets. You can't. I mean, I have clients who end up saying, well, maybe I won't make money this year. And if I don't make money this year, I haven't made money in 3 years. So they're probably going to let me go from my job. And that all may happen. And I'm scared of that happening. But that has nothing to do with the trade I'm making today.
Right.
My dogs are barking because we have a menagerie of animals outside. So let me just get up and shut the door.
Sure.
We may still be able to heal them, but not quite as well. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to bring this back to health because I think there are, or bring it to health, I guess. There are some really interesting parallels. So, for example, I work with a lot of health coaches and they all have this fear, not all of them, a lot of them have this fear that's like, well, I don't know enough, or there's so much information out there. What does anyone need from me? And what we talk about a lot is what you just said, right? Like information doesn't necessarily help people change. Like you can know all of the things. You can look at that that cancerous lung on the side of the cigarette pack and still smoke the cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
So what does help people change? And if we're thinking about taking risks, right? Like what I've realized, and I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast where they've come to, right? It's like we actually have to be responsible personally for our health. There was an idea that we could kind of like rely on institutions or rely on our doctor or rely on these, we could kind of outsource a lot of that to other people who know better. And it's just become so complex. Technology has moved so fast. The world is changing so much. Research is moving faster than the institutions can teach it, that we really have to take ownership of that ourselves. So we now have this new job of being our own health coaches or our own health coaches, not our own doctors, but our own health coaches. And so help us navigate that risk. Help us, I know I should do this. I know I should order those blue blockers, but God, they're going to look weird. Or whatever it is. Help us navigate our way through that.
Well, one strategy I give people is to always ask themselves 3 questions, which is, what do I want to happen? What do I honestly, really, really deep down think is going to happen? Now that's aimed at getting it like that little voice in your gut, which, by the way, there's all kinds of research showing that gut feeling or intuition is a valid form of knowledge. Like the more of an expert you are in something, the more the knowledge goes from like this explicit linear step by step to like pattern recognition delivered to you in a sense or feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I afraid will happen? So what I'm trying to do is essentially neutralize to some degree the desire, although I'm a fan of using desire, like being really clear about what you want, not setting it aside in a sort of, it's a setup for disappointment, but really figuring out what you really want and what you would have to do to get it, even if it's a wild dream. What do you honestly really think is going to happen versus what are you afraid is going to happen? And a lot of the time, if you can really answer those truthfully, your ability to follow that like thing that you really deeply think improves. Like your chances of following it because oftentimes within what you want, what you really think, and what you fear, there's a conflict.
Mhm.
Like you think you want to do this, but you're afraid of doing it, or like it's hard for me to come up with a health example right off the top of my head, but like with my clients, when they're making a trade, they'll like be in some, be long the Japanese yen, and they do really think such and such, but they're actually afraid. Like the Federal Reserve is going to make this announcement, and that's going to negatively influence their trade. But they don't realize, like they don't consciously realize they have a conflict. So I think like we don't consciously realize it, partially because we're trying to set the feelings aside and just talk ourselves into the logic. But when we consciously see the conflict, like we can resolve it. We can go, okay, well, these two things could happen, but the thing I want to happen is this, and I really think that. So I'm going to go with it. I'm going to tolerate the fear, and I'm going to go with it. But it's like until we shine light on that conflict. So I had a client this week. I mean, speaking of blue blockers, like I tell everyone, like if you're going to do one single thing, first of all, change your view of sunlight. Just like I say, change your view of emotions, change your view of sunlight. Now they can't really wrap their heads around that. She told me she was getting on, now her doctor said her blood pressure was high. So she's getting up and getting right on the Peloton. I'm like, when does the sun come up in San Francisco? Can you take a walk outside instead of the Peloton? But then I went, and did you buy those blue blocking glasses? Because see, what I also know is if you don't sleep well, you misperceive risk. So I'm always trying to get my clients to get better sleep. And I literally think the number one thing you can do, like for the average person, right, who can't just totally, like they can't get their head wrapped around sunlight, is get the blue blocking glasses. So at night when you're on your computer, because you have to be because of work, you are not like getting that light in your eyes. Because I know for myself, the very first time I put them on, I noticed a difference in my sleep that night, like the very first night. Now some people would say I was expecting it, but I really wasn't, anything I wasn't. So I've sort of veered around what you actually asked me.
I find that so interesting about how bad sleep messes with your ability to perceive risk.
This is the thing. You don't see the risk. Like you look at it like, I live in a ski town, and like a fatigued person might ski a slope they really aren't qualified to ski. Or literally, This is a stupid example, but I used to live in Roosevelt Island in New York. It's a little island in the East River, and like there's a tram at the end of the island that goes over to 59th Street, and there's a bus that goes down the island, gets almost to the tram, but stops like, I don't know, 1,000 feet before it or whatever. Literally the day I was reading this research, I was really tired. It stopped there 1,000 feet before the tram. There was a bunch of people to get on and off. And I thought, you know what? I can beat this bus to the tram. And I got off and I started to run. And sure enough, halfway through, the bus passed me. And I literally in my head went, that's what they're talking about. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. It was a dumb idea to think I was going to beat that bus. But it seemed perfectly logical to me at the moment I made it. You don't see the risk when you're fatigued.
Wow. It's like the part of us that can accurately assess that is not functional when we're really tired. Or when we're getting bad quality sleep, less functional.
I didn't decide to swim to the, like I didn't go insane, but like I just miscalculated. And I don't do this so much anymore. I've just gotten out of the habit, but it used to be whenever a client would call me up and said, I had an awful day, I'd start with like, okay, how well did you sleep last night?
Right. Yeah, that's so true. It makes you wonder about a lot of the decisions are getting made in the world today by hyper tired people or people who've been on their phones all night. The competency crisis. Maybe it's a sleep crisis.
I'm sure how could we not have a sleep crisis? I mean, the vast majority of the world is looking at blue light until the moment they turn their lights on. Whether it's on their phone, their computer, their television, or some combination of the two of the three or all three at the same time. And they don't know that they think they're getting work done, right? Getting work done and trying to relax at the same time.
Right. Really, they're just dysregulating everything. Okay, so when we need to make decisions, whether we're
trying to make a risky decision or trying to motivate ourselves to take an action that we intellectually know will be good for us, but we just can't quite seem to get there. Connecting with the feeling of it and the feelings that are in the way of it.
If you go down the rabbit hole, like, okay, I'm afraid this will happen. Well, then I'm afraid if that happens, this will happen. And if then that happens, this will happen. Almost all of us naturally catastrophize. Yeah. Or some of us, it goes all the way to, like, and then I die. A lot of people, it just goes to, like, I'll fail my family and I'll be alone.
Yeah.
At its core, the brain is going to do that. It's going to say, Meredith, make sure you've thought about the worst. Like, question I ask people all the time is, what's the absolute worst that can happen?
Yeah.
And they'll answer with a superficial answer, like the next thing, and I'll go, and then what? And then what? And then what? Oftentimes, if you can get to the bottom of it, the thing the brain's trying to, you go, oh, well, that could happen, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. Or that could happen, but if I do X, Y, and Z, it won't happen. I think that's the purpose.
Right.
But there's a plethora, does not do it justice, of advice to not do that, to think positive. Yeah. Like, so people,
and that's
people
so
are
interesting.
to do it.
Yeah, because I find I can't think positive till I've done that, right? Like, I need to make friends with the biggest fear. And I was saying that, I think it was my husband. I was saying that to him one time. I was like, okay, well, the absolute worst thing could happen is this. And like, so if it does whatever. And he's like, why would you talk about that? I'm like, well, I always do that. Don't you do that? He's like, no. He's like, that sounds terrible. I'm like, but if I make friends with it, then it doesn't feel as terrible. And then I can, reframe it somehow.
You literally are working with your brain the way it was built. Our unconscious is going to alert us to our biggest risk. That's its job, to make sure that we use our expertise to avoid that. But it wants us to know, like, worst possible case, this thing could happen. And then once you consciously acknowledge it, it's like, okay, got that message to Meredith's conscious mind, like, she can handle it now. So when you try to squash that, it actually gets louder, more intense, more disruptive. It's exactly the opposite. And I see this almost every day that I do what's the worst that can happen with a client. And at the end of it, they go, oh, well, what I should do is X, Y, and Z. And they feel really clear about what they should do.
Right.
It's like,
because otherwise we're operating out of avoidance of that, as opposed to just like looking it in the eyes.
Your brain's going to do it. Your brain's job is to keep you safe. Now, do all of us have like exaggerated risk based on things that have happened to us in the past? Yes. We got a client who called me up in the first meeting. He said, I used to be able to take a bunch of risks. I can't take that much risk now. I don't really know what happened. Well, I know that this big trade went wrong when Russia invaded Ukraine. They traded in the energy markets. And I almost lost all my money, but like I was on a plane and I got off and I saw it. I got out of the trade. We lost money, but we didn't distraught. And I was like, have you ever had like a near-death experience before? And sure enough, when he was 18, his friend drove them into a semi-truck, and like, it's a miracle they lived. So he had a and to this day, he wouldn't let anybody else drive because he had this near death, and like, it felt the same to him. But it's literally, as soon as we talked about like the fear left over from that applied to this, he was like, okay. And he was able to start trading larger, trading more like he used to before the near death market experience.
The human mind is so infinitely fascinating, isn't it?
Well, it is. It amounts to being conscious of whatever is going on.
Right.
But we're generally kind of afraid. I mean, some people are more afraid than others. But then there's so much advice, like self-help psychology advice, that even if it doesn't say it directly, it says, don't have those feelings, don't think those thoughts.
Right. And
then you end up working against yourself. I say, Like once you learn the earth is round, you can sail around it. So you have a lot more options. Once you learn that all your emotions actually have like there's an emotional logic to everything. Once you learn that, you can like sail around your mind and therefore then your own life in a much more expansive way.
Oh, I love that.
It's true. It's really true.
It is. And what you said earlier, where you wrote that article and it really caught on because it was the truth, right? And I feel like we resonate with the truth when we hear it, even if we're not trained in that topic.
Right.
We respond to it. What's going on there with that? Because sometimes we feel the truth, we see it, and then we're like, I don't really want to deal with the implications of that being true.
Right. The truth is, I don't know. I've actually wondered that myself. Why is it that people respond to the actual truth? I mean, I'm going to say that has to be built into us somehow, but I can't speak to the neuroscience of why that is. I know it's true.
Yeah.
I know it's true that people respond, or a lot of people do. It depends on the topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people don't want to find out that the doctor they've been trusting is unintentionally misleading them because they're just reporting what they don't want to find that out. Or they don't want to find out that the candidate for president they've been supporting is corrupt or whatever. You don't want to find out that you're wrong or been misled. Nobody, I mean, it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
So you sort of resist finding that out. But by the same token, a lot of people, have a feeling that something isn't quite right. The medical advice isn't quite right. The political choice isn't quite right. Pick a whatever. But they don't know where to find the answer. And then when they hear, I mean, that's what happened to me. I once gave a talk at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and there were like 200 to 250 of those mostly guys, a few women, but in those jackets, who came upstairs to hear me speak after the floors closed. And I had one of them comment to me, you made these 250 guys sit still for an hour. Well, when you trade on the floor, it's very physical, right? You see everybody's physical energy as opposed to when you're on the computer. So a lot of them had been using their feelings. They just didn't know how to articulate it. So when I articulated it, that first of all, you are, and second of all, it's a good thing, they were like so relieved. Because basically they started saying, I've been doing this, but I never wanted to admit it.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, it'd be a really nice thing to figure out.
Yeah.
Why we resonate.
Yeah. If we don't have too many things getting in the way, we do resonate with the truth. So that brings me to something else that I wanted to talk about, which is, you talked about how, so we all use emotion to make a decision. That is just human. But then within that, there's a spectrum, and a lot people's the intensity of their response or the type of emotion they're experiencing may have to do with how they relate to authority figures. So looking at the traders that you've worked with for your career, one of your key insights was that the market itself acts as a kind of authority figure. So when the person's making the trade, however they relate to authority figures, that's the dominant emotional pattern that's going to come up. So I'm thinking, if we have a certain type of relationship with authority, and that authority, when it comes to our health, that authority is the doctor, or the World Health Organization, or something outside of ourselves. And I don't totally know where I'm going with this, but I'm applying your insights to how we make health decisions and how our decisions are maybe controlled by our relationship to authority.
Yeah. So this is an actual personal example. My parents were, like salt of the earth, no kind of malice or, gaming. They just didn't know any better, like working class, work hard, save your money, like, pay your taxes. They didn't have any. So that led to me, I trust authority. Or I did, I don't, but my natural default was these people, are all trying to do the best they can. And there's like no real reason to doubt them. And I mean, extended all the way to the government until COVID. My husband, on the other hand, came from a very prim, proper family, conscious of how they're perceived, conscious of what people. So they always like say the right thing or the polite thing. Like where if my dad was mad, you knew it. Like he's just like, "What's wrong with you?" Like.
Right.
So my husband basically learned to distrust authority because it was never really clear if his parents were saying what they really meant or sort of the proper thing to say.
Right.
So I think we all have, variations within that, right? Like, or did authority punish us? Like something I run into a lot is kids who were really smart, who were rewarded for being really smart, who always did well in school. And now they're in this environment that is so difficult. And they're not terrified of the trade being wrong and losing money. They're terrified of their management thinking they're not smart because that's a risk. That's their self-image. So authority needs to see how smart they are for them to be safe. Well, I mean, how do we say that like our doctors who went to medical school are wrong? I mean, they went to medical school. And I think, like I said to you in my comments, with our health, there's this, what in the hedge fund world or other would be called information asymmetry. So like we assume the doctor knows a lot more about our bodies than we do. Basically, we think. It's not, we don't have a consumer reports that says, this oven works better, this car has this problem, but it's really good. We don't have a consumer reports for this body of knowledge that we can't completely comprehend. I mean, we may not need to, but my dog is barking. Can you hear it? Okay. He's a puppy and he's like not getting what he wants. So like, and his self-image is, I deserve to get exactly what I want at all times.
Every moment.
So like I have a friend who I've tried to tell about sunlight and blue light blocking. And her father was a surgeon. She just cannot hear it. And I have to watch her slather on the sunscreen. And I mean, not that this is a direct correlation, but she always has the flu or she always has COVID again, or she's fallen and broken her arm again. Like, and I can't, but, not only like her father was her father, an authority figure, but he was also a surgeon. So it was also a product of, and she just can't hear it. But there's one thing I tell people to do is think about how you expect somebody, a celebrity, to treat you. If you meet a celebrity, do you expect them to like be kind and nice to you or like ignore you and tell you? Like that tells you something about what you think you can get from the world. Like where you fit and it's some sort of hierarchy. I mean, I have a doctor, one Western medicine doctor, who says, I trust your viewpoint of your body more than I trust anything else. Now that's rare, right? Though?
Yeah.
But there's sort of, we get this idea of, are we entitled to have an opinion about ourselves that is respected? Like a 4-year-old has got information about, are they entitled to have an opinion? My puppy thinks he should be respected, right? Like some 4-year-olds will think they should based on how their parents have interacted with them and some won't. Or even if you have an older brother and sister, like I see this all the time. People have older brothers and sisters who constantly competed with them and constantly put them down. And they're either constantly trying to prove they're smart or constantly trying to prove they should be listened to. But it wasn't the parents, it was the brother 3 years older that, wanted to make sure that they were wiped off the face of the planet, or at least didn't get any attention. So we have these expectations that are buried in there that tell us our right or not right. But it's really hard, because back to that information asymmetry thing, even me, and I'm pretty good at saying, unacceptable things. I'm pretty good at standing up for myself. But like, man, when that very nice standard Western medicine doctor really pressures me for the vaccine, I mean, I'm never going to say yes. But those moments, like if I wasn't so stalwart in what I know, like I would just give in and get it.
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to be trustworthy. And I think the saddest thing in the whole is the fact that you have a lot of people who went to medical school, well-intentioned, wanting to help people, and we're basically taught a model that's skewed. We're taught a model where the answer is a drug or a surgery.
Yeah.
Not that the body is one system like a car and everything affects everything else. I mean, I thought this before I learned what I learned about circadian rhythms. But by the way, just as an aside, but in support of the whole circadian rhythm, a few years ago, I was going to Hong Kong from New York, and I had a neuroscientist tell me to look at this app called Time Shifter, which basically tells you, for jet lag, tells you how to change your time of day for light, caffeine, and food. And said if I followed it, I wouldn't have jet lag. And I was willing to try anything because, they'll jet lag 12 hours around the planet. I followed it. I should have realized then, but I didn't. Right. I got to Hong Kong from New York City with 0 jet lag.
Wow.
I landed at 2:30, got to my hotel by 4:30, ordered room service, had dinner, unpacked, got myself settled, went to bed at 9:30, fell asleep, woke up the next morning at 6:30, like I had not left New York, by manipulating my light, time I ate, and caffeine. But I mean, that's a miracle, except that it's not.
Right.
Except that it's not. But I mean, I'm a dermatologist here. I went to just to have one, or, I had a mole or something, I mean, the pressure you get to slather yourself with sunscreen, even every day when I'm sitting in my office.
Yeah.
I mean, very hard to withstand that. I mean, I do it, but boy, they don't make it easy. But I know. I think it's like, I recently went to OBGYN, and she's the sweetest woman, meaning really well. She's been mistaught. It's tragedy. It's just tragic. Now, never mind. Medical school's funded by the drug companies. They don't get any nutrition advice. Why sunlight became so vilified doesn't even make any sense. I mean, they used to know, right? They used to put TB patients out on the verandas, and
or even heliotherapy was in the turn of the century. It was widely accepted.
Yeah. Or I just saw something the other day. I can't remember where I saw it or what it was. It was basically the COVID side effects in some country that's very sunny. I don't remember. And like, there were none.
Right.
I was like, that ought to tell us something. It wasn't that no one got COVID. They just didn't get like this long COVID or really bad COVID, or
they were able to heal from it, resolve it. Yeah, well, I think that, your work is very meaningful for all of us right now, whether we're traders or not, because we are consistently and increasingly confronted with these like high risk decisions that are coming from places of authority, and we have to navigate what we know to be true versus what we're being told and somehow make a decision. And it's like trading, I guess it's going to be different every time. For every moment, sometimes maybe you do need a surgery or something like that, right? So it's I feel like your contribution is very relevant and needed for all of us right now. So thanks for making it.
Thank you. Let me give everybody one tip. Like,
Please.
so like I'm saying, I'm about to go to a Western medicine doctor because whatever, I will tell myself on the way in the door, like, oh gosh, I hate this. I just hate this. Like I let myself have the feeling about it.
Right.
And then I'm able to like, just, smile and laugh about it and say, I get it. I get why you want me to take the shingles vaccine, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to, in a charming sort of way. And so like the last time I was at the doctor, he said, okay, I'm just marking this off your chart because you are never going to do it, are you? I'm never going to do it. And like we laughed about it. But if I wasn't able to say on my way in the door that I hate this, or I had a client, a big famous client, and I used to tell myself, I used to just admit my own feeling, which is I was intimidated whenever I went in his office in New York. That man, if you asked him if I was intimidated by him, he'd laugh. Because I was when you're able, if you admit the feeling to yourself, you're able to keep it to yourself. It doesn't sort of seep out in your body language or your intonation or like how you react. You can keep it to yourself. Anyway, so that's a thing. Like, and it gives you strength. Okay, I hate that I'm going to have to like tell this doctor that I'm not doing this, or that I'm telling the dermatologist. I told them that I go outside early in the morning. Like, I didn't tell them I also go outside during the day. Like, well, they were like, you still need sunscreen. I'm like, I don't know.
Oh,
like,
for God's sake.
The sun's just coming up. And by the way, I lost 10 pounds out of nowhere by sitting outside in the morning last year.
Wow.
I had nothing else. 10 menopause post-COVID pounds just by going outside every morning and not getting on my computer. Like, the weight just started dropping off. Anyway.
Amazing.
Cortisol, melatonin, like all those other hormones, like.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, it's so amazing. That's so cool. Okay. So yeah, I think that's it. Any last words of wisdom?
What am I feeling and why? And try to answer it accurately, knowing that half of what you're feeling is just a projection of your self-image. And hold that in one hand and then listen to your feelings about the problem you're trying to solve that are in the other hand.
Right. So feel the feeling. I wrote down from your book, feel what you feel as much as you can feel it.
And sort it out. Like the objective is, it's data. You want to like categorize. I mean, Jennifer Lerner of Harvard says this.
Yeah.
So it's not just me. I'm just the messenger.
Well, we appreciate it. And yeah, I noticed that too. It's like, I find myself going to do something and my stomach will tighten and I'm like, what's going on? What is that? And then it's like, oh, and I find out all these things that I thought about that action I was about to take that I'd had no idea. I didn't have a conscious idea. Oh, well, I'm kind of worried about this. And oh, well, I'm really writing this email because, not because this person really needs the information, right? Like, oh, there's just, it's such a rich experience. And then I find I end up in less trouble because I'm clearer on the actions I take.
Yeah, you don't do the things that you're like, oh, why did I do that again?
Yeah.
Or less of them. You don't say the thing that you shouldn't say. But honestly, maybe the biggest skill in life is just be able to feel what you feel and then decide what to do. Yeah. And don't feel guilty about it. Like don't feel guilty about any feeling. It starts with, by the way, wanting to, being willing to.
Right.
You don't have to be afraid. Your actual core feelings are trying to help you. The true ones about the situation. The old ones that are projection of your previous experience may be distorted. Trick is to know the difference. And you only know the difference if you get all the data out on the table.
Right. Yeah, it's a freer, more liberating way to live. It takes a little practice, but it's...
Well, you're able to start to bring your real self to the world. Like all of us actually have something to contribute to the world. Like when you honor yourself by respecting your own feelings, like your ability to bring whatever your gift is to the world increases. I mean, you had the ability, but your willingness, your opportunity, like to grab that, to become that health coach, that you can provide a service to people who need it. Like, and let me say this, like, even as a consumer of all of this, I want to find the person who can simplify some of it for me. Like, who can just say, do this, 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 and this. I can talk about it, I mean, just my clients, you could listen to my podcast, but people call me and want me to just like make it personal for them. That's always a service. Everybody's short on time. We don't have the time to, understand everything that you do or, the people you're teaching do. So like, bring the value.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I mean, this podcast exists because I went through that journey. I was like, no, I don't want to know. I want to stay hidden. I want to stay back here. And then one day, I don't know. I just got over it, I guess.
Well, I am really glad both for what it's done for my husband and me, as well as I refer client. I'm like, okay, look, there's all this information about sunlight. I can tell you this, this, and this, but what you should do is the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. Go scroll through it, listen to a few episodes, because it gives me this great resource that
Thank you.
All the time.
Wonderful. Well, and speaking of resources, so you also have a podcast and a newsletter?
I don't have a podcast.
A podcast. Okay. You are on someone else's.
I just get interviewed by a lot of them. I have a newsletter. My company's the ReThink group.
Okay.
That came from ReThink Thinking, by the way. .net. We have a newsletter that we should be better about sending out, but we do send out periodically. I'm very active on Twitter. I talk about everything.
Okay, fabulous.
Sunlight politics.
All the things.
All the things.
What's your Twitter handle?
My Denise, my initial K, Shull, Shull.
Okay. So at Denise K. Shull, and we'll put the ReThink group in the show notes for people to get your newsletter if they want to work with you or engage your company, who do workshops and all kinds of amazing things. And I think I really just want to reiterate how you have found a way to bring a depth. I have a background in executive coaching and it's great and very helpful, right? But sometimes, these big companies don't always bring the deepest insights when it comes to our feelings. And you've managed to make them want to do that, which is very cool.
Thank you. It was like a mentor. I don't know who runs the world or how things really work beyond what we can see, but I was definitely born to do this.
Yep.
So.
All right. Thanks so much, Denise.
Thanks for having me.
Well done. You've made it to the very end of the episode. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate having you here. You make it the whole thing worthwhile. Come and join the club at reverseagingclub.substack.com.